Everyone, it is showtime. And Dave, I am back with you. How did last week go?
CR, please don't ever do that again. We had some major issues. As you know, I was trying to text you on some of those, but then we got to the point of going live and it told me that I couldn't go live. I'm not sure what happened. I clicked on the area that said try it again, and I tried it again, and it just said, sorry, you're too late.
No problem. Well, I'm back, and yeah, I did get those texts. We were in the middle of doing my son was looking at some colleges, and it would have been hard to kind of run around and do a quick show, but I'm glad you at least made it through.
Well, I'm glad you're at least at a college and you weren't on a zip line or something, going down. It's like, let me help him out.
Yeah, it send you the wrong text, but
yeah. So I think we got to YouTube, but unfortunately, I think Facebook ended up being a bust for last week. But it was great to have Ben on the show, talk a little bit about taxes and some of the things that he had to share with us.
Good. Well, now we're back and we're talking retirement. You've had a crazy busy week. You've had a lot of stuff you've been working on. And we also went through some fun shows. We did a couple new shows, webinars. And tell me how all of that process has gone for you.
So it's been a wild 7 days. If I go back during the last 7 days, I've done 3 new webinars, all on topics that are fairly new. I know quite a bit about them going into the webinars. One of them was a question and answer. So obviously you never know exactly what you're going to get there. But it's been a wild week. Had a great time, got great reviews. I've met with tons of people. Opened my calendar up to start meeting with more people, and it is getting filled. We're having great times just getting to know people better. All in all, been a good week, but I will tell you, it's very crazy with the holidays and everything else we have going on.
And it even looks like you've got a new display behind you. I mean, you've all of a sudden just stepped up your game. It's great.
Hey, it's coming together. I do have a piece of artwork I'm working on. It's going to go right behind me. It's going to be a big reveal in January. So you'll be able to look forward to that in January. It's about halfway done right now. It took me a while to come up with the idea of what I wanted to do. But that'll be coming. I've also got some other memorabilia that's coming. I've got one of Shaquille O'Neal's shoes. I will disclose that. Be displayed. If you want to see what a size 21.5 shoe looks like, you'll be able to see that in January as well.
Well, I can't wait. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere for a while, so we'll be here ready to go. Dave, now we also want to just let everyone know who are watching live, go ahead and submit your retirement questions. Dave will get to those. We also encourage you to let us know where you're watching from. We have a lot of people that come in from all over the country, and we really encourage you to come and say hi and let us know where you're watching from. And also, again, submit those questions. So as I have a list of questions here, I'm shooting off to Dave. We'll also go through and have some other ones from you that will come in. So Dave, are you ready to get started today?
Let's go. I am ready.
Okay. So my first one I have comes from Laura, and Laura says, what happens to my Medicare premiums if I have to amend a previous return and report higher income?
Laura, great question. So let's talk a little bit about the issue here that she's dealing with. The big issue is that if you make too much money, if you go over a certain cap, then your Medicare premiums are going to be affected. And it's a 2-year delay on when the effect's going to take place. But if you go back and you have to amend and take that income above that level, you're going to get hit by Medicare a couple of years in the future, letting you know that you do have to pay additional premiums for that period of time. And these are year-to-year basis. So if your income goes back down, it's not going to be a problem. But if you do have a 1-year window, even from an amended return that bumps that up, somewhere in the future, you are going to have to pay increased premiums for a year to be able to cover that difference.
And Dave, let me just ask you a generic question, but how does income affect the monthly Medicare premiums when we're talking about this?
Yeah. So again, it's not immediate. This is the big problem most people have is they look at it and they think, oh, it's going to immediately happen. Well, the government has no idea what you're making today until you report that on a W-2, and then they're able to see what your annual income is. That point, they go, oh, wait a second, we've got a problem. It exceeds the threshold. And for a married couple, for your Medicare premiums to go above the $144.60 they currently are, you've got to be about $174,000. So it's a pretty high income level. But once you do, then it just slowly starts creeping up, $40 or $50 increments there until you hit $750,000, I believe is the top cap there. So
Okay.
it's not going to affect you immediately, CR, but it is a couple of years down the road, you're going to get notice. Now, certain things, if you had a situation where maybe you had a job that paid you a big bonus and then you lost that job, you would be able to fight with the or submit a application with Medicare. I guess you may not have to fight with them. Sometimes you do, but submit an application back to Medicare and then request that they reduce those premiums on your behalf because of a one-time event.
Yeah. Well, great, Dave. Thank you so much. I just want to jump on and let you know we've got lots tuning in today. We've got Corey saying hello.
Well, I'm glad to see there's at least one good-looking person in that picture there, Corey, and it's not the guy on the bottom. Hey, Corey, it's good to see you. Love you to death. Thanks for being with us today. Got to give you a little bit of grief here as we approach the holidays. I'm sure your family doesn't give you enough of that, so I've got to do it from my side.
We also got Jeff on that says your favorite financial advisor is checking in and from Florida.
Jeff, good to see you. Had a chance talking to him earlier today. Always great to catch up with he and Corey both, and great to have both of you here with us today.
We also got Chantel coming in from Wisconsin. Oh, they have the best grilled cheese sandwich I've ever had from there.
Never been to Wisconsin. That's a place I need to go. So, Chantel, maybe you're going to have to fill me in on all the great places to see there.
Yeah. And with that, Dave, we also have, so from people tuning in and saying hi, and again, I encourage you to let us know where you're watching from and also your comments. But I do have two live questions coming in, if I can even talk today. I've been gone for a week and I can't talk. So our first one comes in from Fred, and Fred's a longtime viewer here on Facebook. We've got YouTube Live as well. Fred says, "Hi, Dave. Am I remembering correctly that you previously said that rental real estate is not a good asset to hold in retirement? If so, can you explain why? Thanks."
Fred, I have mentioned that many times. I talk about rental real estate, and there's a couple of reasons for it. The first one is the fact someone's got to manage it. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the taxes and really what the bigger issue is. But once we get into retirement, what I've seen over time is as you get older, it becomes very difficult to manage rental property. And as a result, what I often find is that individuals are not maximizing the benefits from the property. Maybe they're not able to keep up with the repairs, so they start losing value. Maybe they just can't keep up with the tenants the way that they used to. And so they allow people to slide on rent or those type of things. But the real big issue comes down to it's going to force you, unless you put it into a self-directed plan. If you were to do that, it wouldn't be this case, and it would have to be a Roth plan, but it's going to subject you to taxes for the rest of your life. And it's probably going to subject your Social Security to tax for the rest of your life, because we've got provisional income that takes your taxable income, tax exempt interest income, and one half of your Social Security. If it exceeds certain thresholds, your Social Security will be taxed forever. And that's the problem, because for most people, by the time they get into retirement, that property's lost all of its depreciation. Mortgage is usually paid off, so there's not a lot of deductions. Therefore, all you've got is cash flow coming in that's going to create a big tax bill. And when you have tax on your Social Security, those other assets are going to run out much faster.
And Dave, you did talk on one of your podcasts. It's one of your previous episodes on the season 2. You did talk about this, didn't you? Go about and talk about your experience in the rental business and also the people you worked with.
Yeah, I actually share a story of two different groups that they were involved in the same real estate properties. One was a couple and an individual. They had known each other for years. And I share a story in there of how they both took different paths. And please take advantage of listening to that. But it is something that you really should look at if you believe, as I do, the tax rates are going to be higher in the future, and you're going to get to a position that you may not have the right strategy to take care of that property. It could be a good time to dump those properties and invest it in something that's not going to require as much work and that would not require as much tax. So you could have a much simpler and easier retirement.
Yeah. Fred responds back and says, thanks, makes sense. And Fred, just to let you know, if you didn't hear at the beginning, Dave is now meeting with everyone. He has these half-hour spots he's opening. So if you want to be able to spend some time, go to the Prosperity Guy, and there's a little form of strategic tab there you can fill out and maybe see if that might give you a little bit more clarification. Thank you so much for doing that. Dave, I've got one from Corey. Corey was said very true on your comment earlier. And now he wants to ask you a question. And he said, will Roth conversions also cause Medicare to be higher? Can that make it counterproductive at times?
Corey, it is going to make it go higher if you exceed the limits, and it is not something that you can get out of. There are two things really that you can't get out of. One's an inheritance. If you get a large payout from an inheritance where you've got to pay tax on it, you're not going to be able to contact Medicare and say, look, I've got an exception here. I've got to be able to have this reduced. Roth conversions or the other. But generally what I see, it is not that counterproductive, because what we see is the increases are so small. And again, it's a 1-year increase. It's not like it's going to last for the rest of your retirement, that it's so small that it's a very small percentage of the overall transfer of assets. So when we look at it, maybe your current tax bracket's 24%. When we add that Medicare adjustment, it may only be 24.5% or 25%. Well, if we're looking to a future where your tax liability may be, or your tax rate may be 30, 35%, it makes a whole lot of sense, even including the Medicare increased premiums, to do that transition. So you do need to look at it case by case. That's why we have advisors out there that help us, like Corey, individuals like myself who can step in and help you, because it is something that you're going to want to look at on your own facts and circumstance basis. But many times it's not that big of an issue when you look at the overall picture.
Exactly. Corey, thank you so much for that message. And again, if you have retirement questions, as we're going through our questions here, please go ahead and submit those. And when we get another break, we'll come on and address those and shoot those out to Dave as well. All right, Dave, let's get down to my next question I have for you. This one comes from Penny. And she says, if I am in my high income years, does it make sense to do a Roth conversion?
Not always. And again, I hate to always say that it is based on facts and circumstances, but if you're in a situation where you're in just maximum earning years, that you've got maybe a 5-year window where you know that I'm going to be way higher tax bracket than I'm going to be in retirement, because maybe you haven't saved anything. Again, that's part of what you've got to take into consideration as well. Is, did you make a ton of money during your working years and then didn't save anything for the future? Well, yeah, you're going to be in a very much lower bracket because there's nothing there to be taxed. There's no income left. But what we find for most people is, if you're in your high income years and you're saving appropriately, that it still could be a good time to do a conversion, especially if you can still take advantage of the 24% tax bracket, if there's still some excess room. Because with the savings that you have, the fact that you're going to lose most of your deductions by the time you get to retirement, your taxable income may not be that much different. So if tax rates go up a percentage or two, or 10 or 15%, you're in a better option to take advantage of those higher brackets that we have now and these lower rates than what we're going to have in January 1st, 2026, when everything reverts back to what it was in 2017.
And Dave, I like that in the past you have mentioned anything with the word Roth in it is a great investment. You look at that. And I liked how we talked today that you mentioned, hey, not always in the case is this going to help everyone. And so you're kind of making sure you're giving everybody that opportunity, because again, retirement's not set up as a blanket to cover everything. You're kind of letting everyone know that, hey, everybody's situation is different. And so it's going to kind of change varying upon where you are currently.
Yeah, it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all process by no means. Everything looks different. Your retirement's going to look different than your neighbors. It's going to look different than mine. CR and my retirements are going to look different. We have different plans. We've got different family sizes. Our marriage structures may be different based upon spouse ages and those type of things. All that needs to be taken into consideration. In fact, I did a planning session this morning with someone, and they have 3 young children in the home. The husband's already retired. The wife's wanting to retire. Well, we started looking at their Social Security, and in theory, you would think it's probably their advantage to start taking money early. They've got 3 young kids that could benefit from the Social Security benefits. We ran the calculations, and that wasn't the case. That actually was better for the husband to wait until age 70, and he's in a position that he can do that. The wife's claiming strategy varied between 62 and 70, depending on life expectancy and how long they expected each of them to live. But it's just interesting to see, as we go through these planning processes, how many times too what you think isn't what the math and science shows. Once we run this stuff through a computer program and let it do the calculations, what we find is it's not always what we think it's going to be from our own brains.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate these questions that come in, and also those who are watching live and those who are even on replay. Keep sending and giving us your questions. Again, we have so many questions. I mean, just thousands and thousands. And so it's so great to have this opportunity to do this with you. Dave, let's jump to the next question here. And this one's from Eric. I'm in my 30s. What do you think about me just completely ignoring Social Security?
Eric, I would not suggest you do that. Now, if you've got enough income out there that you're not worried about it, if you can save enough extra assets that it just becomes the icing on the cake, it's just the last part that helps you get through through retirement. But I wouldn't not contribute to it. If you're afraid to contribute into the program because you're afraid there's not going to be any benefits there, Social Security actually is a great program because not only does it provide benefits for you, it can provide benefits for your spouse if you're married. And if you have children and end up getting disabled or die early, you can also have child benefits. Those aren't provided in any other form or fashion out there. So I wouldn't ignore it myself if I were you. I know you're at an age where you're looking at the stability of the program and you think, wait, it's supposed to go bankrupt about 2035. What's going to happen? Government's going to fix that. The largest voting block when that happens is going to be the retirees. And you know that they're not going to let their benefits just go by the wayside. They're going to vote to maintain those. It may require higher taxes for those who are working to be able to allow that to happen. But that's an option, and it's a solution that can be done to stabilize the program so everyone can continue getting benefits for decades to come.
Dave, in your recent podcast, we kind of talked about a debunk week where we kind of go through and talk about articles that are they're great, but they just don't have all the information, and they're providing information that we have to kind of correct sometimes. When I see something like this from Eric, do you think that comes from the same concept that, hey, Social Security is going broke, or they're going to run out of money? Do you think that he sees this and right away feels like, I don't want to contribute to something that's not going to be there by the time I'm there?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And if you look at there's plenty of people out there saying to ignore Social Security. There are times in my career when I was a CPA in the early years and I looked at where Social Security was then, and again, this was 25 years ago, that I had my doubts of what Social Security was going to be and was it going to last. And as a result, there was some planning at times that was done with people to limit the amount of money that would go into Social Security. But as I've aged and as I look at the reality of where the world's at, as we look at the overall economics of what's going on, it's not something that I get overly concerned about. But yeah, there unfortunately is a lot of advisors out there giving contradictory information, and many of them unfortunately giving bad information.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I wonder if how many people are watching live or on the replay, how many of them really understand Social Security? I mean, we take that topic and say, 1 through 10, how well do you understand this? And I almost would guarantee that everyone's 5 or under, because not everyone has a real good concept of this. And that's why we're here doing the show and having you break down particular topics like Social Security.
I would assume that if I were to take 10 basic questions about the Social Security program, go out on a street corner somewhere where there are a lot of people, give that survey to a random group of 50 people, I would be shocked if more than 10% of those could even answer 5 of those questions. I think that's how unknown Social Security program really is to most people. Now, as they do get older, now, if I were to do it with a bunch of 65-year-olds, that may change because they've gotten to a point where they have to start understanding it. But many times it's too late. By the time you get to that age, it's like this strategy I was doing earlier. The lady that I was working with, she's in her 50s. She can retire at age 60 CR. She can quit working. Now, she doesn't have to take her benefits there, but she could stop working at 60, and it's not going to affect her benefits one bit. So she's like, we've got the money. Why in the world would I want to work till age 70 and contribute into the program? Well, what happened though if she waited until full retirement age to figure it out? At that point, she's worked 7 extra years than she had to, thinking that there were going to be some extra benefits for her that weren't going to be there.
Yeah. Well, Dave, if the coronavirus is gone by the summer, I hope you and I are on a street corner in Memphis or Nashville, and we've got a sign and we're saying, come check your Social Security knowledge. We'll give you $5.
Yep. Yeah, that'll be great. I'm all for it. Let's do it. We'll come back on here and give everybody the results.
Perfect. Well, let's get to our next question. This one's from Devon, and he said, if at age 65, if you already have good health insurance, is there any reason to apply for Medicare?
The only thing that I would recommend that you apply for is Part A, because it's free. There's not going to be any consequences all to you. There's no penalties later on, that you're not going to miss the Medigap enrollment period where you would potentially have issues with pre-existing conditions. But outside of there, for most people, no. If you've got a large group plan, Medicare is going to be the primary or the secondary coverage. So your group plan is going to cover most of the responsibilities of your medical costs. So yeah, you need to look at it yourself. But for most people, what we find is they've got a good policy going into retirement. Keep that as long as you can. And then once that ends up getting lost, at that point, switch over during the special enrollment period into Medicare.
And Dave, I feel like this is very similar to Social Security, where not a lot of people understand Medicare, and we've mentioned this before. But let's ask the question: Medicare and Medicaid. Tell me maybe the difference, so people can get an understanding of what these two differences are.
Yeah, so Medicare is the primary healthcare program from the federal government to cover you once you reach age 65, or you've been disabled for 2 years, or you had kidney failure. Those are the three groups of people that are going to qualify. It's going to cover all of your basic healthcare costs. Medicaid is a state and federal run facility or program, not facility, it's a program that steps in once Medicare, if you have issues where you can't cover the costs of Medicare, if you've got bills that you can't pay because of Medicare. That's what Medicaid is a federal and state run program to help really the poorest of the poor. I mean, when you look at it now, you're listening to this, you're saying, wait, I'm not super poor. Well, and I'm getting Medicaid benefits. It's not meant to be offensive, but it really was a program designed to help keep people out of poverty, to help them be able to cover costs that they were going to have that they didn't have the money to cover with any other assets.
And also with Medicare, there's 4 parts. And can you remind everyone what those 4 parts are, so they understand this maybe a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm going to take this sign out to the corner of Memphis as well. And I think we're going to get maybe 1% of the people to get all this. But there are 4 parts. Part A is the hospitalization insurance. That's free. Everyone's going to get that as long as you've worked and received 40 quarters of credit, or you're married to someone who has received 40 quarters of credits and meet all the qualifications. Part B is the regular insurance you would have for doctor visits, physicals. If you've got a situation where you've got to go see a specialist, you're going to pay $144.60 a month for that. Part C is Medicare Advantage plan. So this is third-party coverage. They wrap all these benefits together. The government allows them to do that. And then Part D is your prescription drug coverage. And that also has a premium that you've got to pay, or a payment that you're going to pay along with the government to help cover those costs. So they're all separate. You can have any part of those, but they are programs that are going to cover various parts of your medical issues that you have during your retirement years.
Great. Well, thanks, Dave. Again, Social Security, Medicare, maybe we'll be on the corner for a long time during the summer doing this, but I think it's great that we can kind of break down some of the basics, because again, people just don't understand this. And so they put it in the back burner, or they just say, we're not going to touch this for a while until we're ready, but by then it's too late. So I really appreciate the advice.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next one I have is from Thomas. And Thomas says, is there an age where it is too early to buy a LIRP, which is that life insurance retirement plan?
To myself, no. And I know other people have different feelings towards this, that when you get young children, that they may be in a situation where you're saying, hey, just buy them a term policy. I've got a little different philosophy on this, and it's maybe different than what your advisor would think. When I look at it for young children, it's a great opportunity to start building cash value in a tax-free environment. So you've got an opportunity to put money into there that's going to be able to grow. You're able to buy that insurance at a very inexpensive rate to be able to get it at a price. Now, obviously, you're going to carry insurance for a lot more years. But when you look at the overall process, it can be a great way to be able to get money to a child's account that can grow, help them maybe if they need to take some money out during college years or other periods of time. But I don't see that there's an age that's too early myself. Obviously, you've got a situation where you've got to be able to go through the medical process. So you're probably not going to be able to get one of these on a baby. And I wouldn't recommend that. But if you've got young children or teenagers, see that it could be a great opportunity for you to help start preparing for their retirement.
Great advice, Dave. I know, like you said, it's a topic that not everyone's going to agree on, but that's okay, because right now we're just trying to give the best advice, and you're giving your advice. You feel it would be helpful for this. And I really appreciate the fact that we're doing that and giving people opportunities out there, instead of just saying you have to clear, cut and dry at this age.
So one other thing I would say too, when you look at this question and when you look at it from anyone's standpoint, I am not a fan of you paying lifetime premiums. Now, I know there's many advisors out there, in order to get the premium amount low, are going to set those premiums up until you reach age 90 or 100. The last thing you want to be doing is throughout your retirement is paying a bunch of life insurance premiums. So even in this situation, or even in your own, I would limit those years. Maybe it's as few as 5 or 7, maybe it's as many as 20, but you definitely don't want a policy, if you're putting it in for a 20-year-old, that they're going to have to pay on for the next 60, 70, 80 years. Chances of that policy lasting, if you do that, are very slim, because it's very hard to predict that far out what someone's income is going to be, and can they make that payment for that long of a period of time?
Yeah, definitely. Great advice on that. Dave, I do have another Medicare question. So let's get Michael on. And Michael says, I signed up for Medicare at age 65, but my wife is only 63. Can she also sign up?
Unfortunately not, Michael. It is truly a 65 age sign up. So now if that were the other way around, if you looked at it and you said that it was your wife that was needing the coverage and she was 65 and you were 63, she can start getting benefits once you turn age 62 on your work record. So if we flip the ages there would be an opportunity. But in her situation where she's the younger spouse, she's going to have to wait until she reaches age 65 to get any of those benefits. And it is a gap out there that's being talked about currently, trying to figure out how they cover that gap. But as right now, you're going to have to get some other type of insurance for her.
Yeah, totally great advice. And I that one's self-explanatory. Dave, the next question I have, I really, really like this question because it breaks down some key parts here from Judith. Can a single woman who is 99 years old still get a reverse mortgage in order to pay people to take care of her in her home? I know this opens up a whole can, but there's lots of scenarios, but just let's break this one down kind of in a good way for Judith here.
Yeah, so Judith has got one really good thing for her, and that is you usually want to wait as long as you possibly can to take a reverse mortgage out. Now, can there be a period that's too long? Could you wait too long to be able to take the reverse mortgage out? The answer for her is yes, she can do it. There's not a question of whether she would be able to do that or not. But the bigger issue for me comes into the fact, if you were looking at it from a survivor standpoint, now we don't know how long she's going to live. She could live another 10 years maybe before she ends up passing away. So we do have some little bit of additional longevity here that we need to take into consideration. But reverse mortgages can be very expensive. It doesn't mean that they're not the right tool, but you could end up paying, someone like Judith could end up paying anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in closing costs. Now, she wouldn't have to come out of pocket for these. They'd get rolled into the loan. But once she ends up passing away or she sells that home and that loan comes to be paid off, someone's going to have to pay all of those upfront closing costs of $10,000 to $20,000. So it may not be the cheapest option. Again, I would want to know her other facts and circumstances. Is there a chance maybe to get a forward-facing mortgage that's a little higher, even though she would have to make payments on that on a monthly basis? But would that be a better option that really need to be looked at? But yeah, I'd be very cautious. Someone at 99, when you look at the overall fee structure of how a reverse mortgage works.
Yeah, especially when you dive into long-term care and so many other things. When you get into this scenario here, it's this one's an interesting question. That's why I brought up, because I really thought this was a great question. All right, Dave, we're going to do one more question if we can, and we're going to bring up Joel. And he asks, if you borrow funds under the line of credit option, can you repay a portion of the loan and then reborrow, or is no repayment or reborrowing allowed?
Joel's question is coming in regards to a home equity conversion mortgage, which is the government-backed reverse mortgage. Many people don't realize that the government is backing the majority of reverse mortgages that are out there. The question here is in regards to one of the distribution options. So maybe let's talk briefly about the various distribution options that you have, and then I'll explain how this works in Joel's situation. So you have three main options when you get a reverse mortgage. One is to take a monthly payment. Now, realize that if you do that, the longer that payment lasts, the less money you're going to get, because they've got a longer period of time that they've got to have interest accruing. The other one is a lump sum distribution. Problem with this is when you get a reverse mortgage, again, remember that what you're doing is you've got a limit, and hopefully we don't go too deep here, but you've got a limit on home value that you can borrow against. But based upon your age, you're only going to be able to get a percentage of that home value. So let's say we've got a $500,000 home. Based upon my age, maybe I can only get $250,000 of the equity out in a reverse mortgage. Well, now if I take the lump sum option, it gets cut in half again. And again, it's going to be slightly different than 50%. I'm giving you a very simplified version, but now you may only be able to get out $125,000. So when you look at the lump sum option, you've got to be very careful because you may not be able to get enough out. And then the other one, which is the most popular and the one I recommend, is the credit line option, which Joel's talking about here, where you're actually getting a credit line for the full amount, and then you can take money out as you go. But yes, you can pay it back in and you can reborrow. It works just like any other credit line, that if you have excess money, you want to pay money back in, pay that off, you can then do that and then reborrow those funds back out again. So that is the great thing too about the credit line option, is you're only paying interest on whatever money you've got out. Any other part of that loan that you have available, you don't have to pay interest on, which is going to help reduce the cost of that reverse mortgage.
And Dave, there's one question I'm going to slide in here because it ties into this perfectly. This one's from Kristin, and she said, I don't understand how a home equity conversion mortgage is different than a home equity credit line. Since we're already kind of there, let's finish this up with the show here.
Yeah, Kristin, let's talk about this. So the big difference here is, remember, with a home equity conversion mortgage, there's no payments as long as you have that mortgage. You're taking money out of there, not having to pay anything back. Home equity line of credit, you're going to have a monthly payment. So it's really coming down to your cash flow and what you're using the assets for. Most people that get a reverse mortgage are going to use it as a method of cash flow in retirement. They want that extra money because Social Security isn't enough. Maybe they've not saved enough other assets, but they've got a home that's worth quite a bit of money. They're saying, look, if I can get a monthly payment off of here, my life can be much better. And when I pass away, I don't really care if somebody gets the house. I'm happy to spend every dollar, bounce the check to the undertaker, and go on to the next life in glory. So that's the biggest issue that we're looking at here. Home equity line of credit is going to require you to make those monthly payments that may be difficult to do. And we mentioned before with the 99-year-old, well, maybe that's the option because it's a cheaper option based upon life expectancy. But for most people, they don't want to add that additional level of payment in a period of time where they're trying to get extra cash as it is.
Exactly. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being here today, for spending a half hour with us. I do want to let everyone know that you do have a podcast that comes out every single Friday. You have a new episode. We're going to be doing something very, very similar to this for this week's podcast. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. And
yeah, me too. We've not done a full episode of just question and answer. We usually will take about 3 questions, but we are going to do kind of a rapid fire, go through, answer a bundle of questions this week.
And I also want to throw in the webinar piece we have here. So again, you talked about this at the beginning. You currently have 13 webinars right now on CPA Academy. And just want to encourage everyone to go to theprosperityguy.com. You can go find any of these on there and schedule for your upcoming webinar, Dave. And so this is a great opportunity for those who are maybe saying, I need to know more about Social Security or reverse mortgages or Medicare. I really feel like one of these could really help them understand a little bit better.
We have a bundle of them coming up this week. We still have, I think, 4 different webinars later this week. We are going to take next week off with Christmas. So you're going to have to go to our website, sign up for the Prosperity Club, or you can get access to the recorded webinars if you'd like to do that. We do have many of our webinars that have been recorded and stored inside the club. And then the week of New Year, we will be back. So there will be a number of webinars that week as well. But please take the opportunity to educate yourself and join us in these various learning formats so you can have a better retirement.
And Dave, the last thing I want to pull up here is one thing we've really decided to open up here is let everyone have a half hour to meet with you and go over and talk about maybe Social Security or Medicare, or just maybe putting a plan together of some sort. And so with this piece, if you go to the Prosperity Guy, you can go to a strategic session tab and fill the form out. And if everything works out, we'll get you scheduled with Dave. And Dave, tell me about this, why we open this up for everyone.
Yeah, what we wanted to do is to be able to help more people. I was realizing that I was doing a good job educating everyone, but I was really struggling myself, even feeling like I was connecting with people. Here we get an opportunity to answer a few questions for people, and during my webinar I get to, but it's really hard if you can imagine being on a webinar with 900 people that are all over the United States that you can't see, that you're trying to make connections with. And so he said, look, how can we best help people that are really ready to take action, who really want to change their retirement? And so I decided to open up the calendar so I could have time to sit down and go through these plans and work with many of our advisors out there to help bring you to a retirement that looks like the retirement of your dreams rather than the nightmare it becomes for so many people.
Exactly. Well, Dave, thank you again for being here, for spending a little time with us and answering these questions and talking about all the different things you have coming. I'm super excited. And 2021 is going to be amazing, and we're looking forward to that. And so Dave, parting words, what do you have for us as we get close to Christmas?
Parting words are 2 things. Number 1, 2021, as CR said, is amazing. We've got some amazing stuff coming. We have got a 4-hour event that we're planning. It may turn into be a little longer, a new webinar that we're putting together that's going to consolidate a lot of what we've already taught. looking forward to that. Going to talk about the changing world of retirement, allow you to go through and better understand in a 4-hour setting, which should be a little smaller settings where we get a chance to answer questions for everyone that's there. Make sure you go away with the education that you have. But the other one is please enjoy the holidays. It's a time to give. It's a time to care for other people. I'm a very service-oriented person. I love to give back to other people. And I hope you'll take that opportunity to do so as well this year during this season, to be nice to others, to be courteous, to look out for the interests of other people. And if you see a need, do your best to try to fill it.
Well, Dave, thank you again so much for being here, and we will see you guys